Okay. Hello and welcome everybody for joining today's podcast, especially for the ones who will be watching it later. So it's my pleasure today to welcome Sravanth. Um, but I'll start with a story. One of the most fascinating stories that I know from the Puranas is the churning of the ocean of milk. So in this story, this was basically a collaboration between the devas and the asuras. Usually they kept fighting against each other, but this is one of the rare occasion when they actually collaborated, and they took Naga Vasuki, says Lord of the Snakes, around this mountain Mandara, and they put this mountain to the ocean of milk. But the moment they put it, this mountain was so heavy and unstable that it was going down. It was not really working. So at that time, Lord Vishnu took the avatar of Kurma. It's Kurma avatar. Kurma is turtle or tortoise. And he went down the ocean and took this mountain on top of his back and really stabilized it. That allowed the operation to move forward. Now, when I tell you this story, you can visualize it, right? You can imagine it, what's happening. And this is probably how we have learned this story the first time, probably from our grandma, teacher. And so that was the only option back then, audio and text. Let me adjust a little bit here. Let me see if I can pin you. Yes. The screen. Okay, great. No, it is not. Okay, that looks a bit better. All right. So I was saying, telling the story, right? So that was the way to hear the story. Either you read it in a book, or you hear it from your grandma or somebody, like a teacher maybe. But then came, images. We could see beautiful images either on the page of a book, or maybe the digital world. You can see an image on the internet. And that gave, another dimension. You could see the colors and, the images of the demons and the asuras and the devas. It really helped you to imagine this. Then came videos, right? So it is not just a still picture. We could see things moving. You could see the action. It added another dimension to our experience. Now we are talking about, of course, the video quality also increased its resolution, and now it is Blu-ray or even more advanced way of looking at a video, but it's still two-dimensional. Now it is moving toward, AR and VR, so you can have an interactive experience. So imagine yourself immersed in this scenario, right? And you're watching this Kurma avatar and then all this action that is happening, and you're in the middle of it. You can interact with it, you can see it, you can feel it, you can experience it. It looks like this gap between the digital world and the physical world is really shrinking. And you can only imagine how this will change in the coming future. So Sravanth here has taken a big leap here and is really working in the cutting edge technology of it, how it really make this happen in real world. So I'm very, very excited to welcome Sravanth and to hear about his journey. So I'll not take more time. The stage is yours, Sravanth.
Sure, Obi, I'm doing this impromptu. So do you have something to start with? Is there an agenda that we should?
Not really. So if you want me to ask you some questions, you can start there. Yes.
If you want, I can.
So
yeah, please go ahead. I think that'll be.
Yes, I'll do that. But in the meantime, hi Pratik and hi Alok. Thanks a lot for joining. Yeah. Whenever, if you get a chance, put on your video. That will be nice. So Sravanth, maybe we start from where we started when we went to IIT Bombay. And maybe you can start from how your college experience was, and maybe some memories from some hostel or your department, your professors, and then maybe tell us a little bit how you got interested in this field. Let's start there.
I mean, I think IIT Bombay is probably the best time of all of our lives. I could probably say that for every one of us. Clearly, great memories. I think the kind of group that we were put into, and with the time that we had, right, 24/7, I think it was probably a great learning training ground, if you will. I still remember the CAC sessions that we used to have starting at 9 p.m. and sometimes leading into early mornings. Right?
Yeah.
Maybe,
Which hostel were you in?
I was in hostel 3 in my first year and hostel 5 in the rest of the
Got it.
But yeah, I think memories wise, I would say just the kind of people that we were with. Um, I had been at home all through my life, being outside all alone when I landed into IIT, and the kind of friendships that we formed, the kind of intellectual horsepower that was there around us would also have had played a role in terms of shaping each one of us. I certainly owe a lot to those roots. Professors, I don't think I was a great student at IIT, so consciously so, and shamelessly so. Yeah, I was probably more enamored with all the other avenues that IIT had. So really, if I had to talk about highlights, it would be a couple of friends forming a band, going out and doing practice on lunch.
Do you come from a big city or a small village or?
I was born and brought up in Ranchi. So my claim to fame is I was MS Dhoni's classmate for 9 years. But yeah, I would call it a big city by any means. But it really, there was fair exposure, know-how in terms of IITs and so on. So very rough journey getting in. I can see my roommate from my first year join. So hi, Anup.
Hi, Anu.
We were just talking about a little bit on it, and I must say this guy probably dealt with me more than I dealt with him. But landing with Anup in that room in the first wing of the hostel, just blending with people, I think was the highlight. The kind of quality of people that were there. We're all in the same, so we all got molded together. So I think if I were to look back between the two educational institutes, base foundation.
Sravanth, maybe I should interrupt you a little bit. Somehow your voice is getting broken in the middle. I don't know. Anup, do you also hear this like broken?
Yeah, it's got
Is this any better?
Yeah, it's broken. It's broken. It's very low, and I also see some background noises.
It could be.
Side. Is this any better, Alok? Anup?
Not really, Sean.
Okay,
Let
give me a
me see.
second. Let me just see if it's my internet connection.
Try again.
You'll probably rejoin. Yeah. There you go.
Is this any better?
Much better.
Okay.
Great, great. All right.
I don't know if you guys followed it, but I was just saying, to your first question, Anup, it's good to see him on the call, but he was my first year roomie. But I think it was the people, honestly, right? People was the highlight of IIT. It was probably a foundational ground where each one of us learned from each other. The kind of intellectual horsepower that we were put in humbled us. Probably we realized that, okay, there's enough talent in the world. And it probably also started showing how collaboration between great minds could have constructive interference, right? So I would say those were the highlights. I was never a good student at IIT, and as I said, was consciously not a good student. So my entire energy went into.
I think Anup studied material science. Were you also in the same branch?
We were both in metal.
By the way, I met Anup much later in University of Delaware. We did our PhDs both at the same university.
It's a small place.
Yeah.
But yeah, people like Anup, right? Those were the real highlights I remember and cherish today. We may not spend too much time with the cobwebs of the life that have settled in, but
भाई आता है कोई मिलता ही नहीं है तो
I saw that coming, Anup. But yeah, that I would say those were the highlights here. The friends that we made, the connections, and the learning that we probably got as a foundation is what formed all of us, including me.
Right. We all went through similar experiences. But let's say, how were you already interested in, let's say, computer vision already back in college, or it came later?
Yeah, I think that was one of the reasons why I was never serious about studies. I was very clear, I had the advantage of my elder brother being an IIT Kharagpur guy, so he had made that transition. So I was fairly enamored, I would say, with internet. It was the beginning of internet when we entered IIT. Equally, I would say, inspired by some of the ESL work that was happening. I was part of it. So could see the entrepreneurship energy. That probably really triggered me towards computer science. In my third year, partnered with a couple of brilliant minds to do some startup myself. We ended up doing some consulting projects. It was almost IT consulting back then, but nevertheless was probably my first step into entrepreneurship. And I would say that's where the computer science element started. I would say computer vision and AI. Today it's called multimodal AI, so there's no difference anymore. But when I started out there 10 years back, it was two different dimensions that we were playing. One was AI and one was computer vision. That I would say was at Microsoft right after IIT. So a lot of my AI grounding started at Microsoft. Back then it was called fuzzy AI. It was a neural in its nature. This was early 2000s, right?
So what was your role in Microsoft?
So I was part of a division called Windows Mobility. Think of all the next generation games that Microsoft was making back then, from Windows Mobile to Xbox to if anything new. Practically, it was the shiny division of Microsoft.
So you're really in the group of innovation.
Yeah, kind of. It was very forward-looking group. DNA. So that's probably where I could kind of get a little bit of connecting the dots aspect on how algorithms will eventually start challenging human intelligence, or in the other way around, unit intelligence is going to equally shift from human to algorithmic. That's where maybe I first felt it in my nascent early life. Went to Wharton for my B school, spent about 6 years as a tech investment banker. 4 years out of that was in Wall Street. That's where probably I really saw the inorganic. My job was M&A, IPOs, FPOs for large tech companies. Tech, media, and telecom was my specialty. And so in the boardrooms of, say, a Google, Apple, a Meta, there was a very evident inorganic and organic investment that started into the attempt to bring about a platform shift, right? And it's today I feel it's probably something that's paid off, in the sense that feels again like beginning of internet, where we most of us started our journeys. The big difference I would say is internet was about connecting data. I think the new transformation platform shift that we're seeing now is going to be connecting intelligence, which is a significant jump if you were to just take a step back and look at it. So I think that being probably an impact multiplier at some level compared to internet. And I'm part of this World Economic Forum delegation now on AI, where we practically call it the fourth industrial revolution. So it's perceived to be that level of an impact as we look forward in the next few decades forward. But that's as I said, the Wall Street experience was where I probably started seeing all these big tech companies, their vision, the huge organic and inorganic. I mean, both acquisitions from an inorganic perspective, but even in the FPOs and the stock market raises that we would do for these big tech companies, a lot of the user proceeds were actually into innovation and into R&D, right? Google obviously did DeepMind back when I was in Wall Street, but even others practically were getting into the belief system that there will be a platform shift where unit intelligence would start looking algorithmic more and more than just human. And today, I think some of that vision has come through. So kind of feel grateful. At some level, it feels like a function of being at the right time, at the right place. And can't take too much credit for that, because luck is a big, as we all know, a big factor there. But I think somehow the journey was such that at Microsoft, I got exposed to those new generation innovation concepts, started getting exposed to it. Wharton kind of gave me the network that was needed to be in the rooms where decisions were being made. And Wall Street kind of gave me those rooms and that time in those rooms to really start absorbing the likely impact. So we started very early. Avataar started in 2014. Back then, I don't think the world still believed in AI. In fact, I still remember the first 2-3 years, be it employees, be it investors, be it clients, the first reaction when I would go in and say, we are trying to blend the confluence of AI and computer vision towards industry contexts, the typical reaction would be very circumspect, right? It would be like, are you here to sell snake oil? Oil back then, because, all good ideas are crazy to begin with. And so was
Right.
ours. Had that own sweet journey. I raised about 5 million from my network.
So hold on a little bit before we move forward. So I totally see that, right? So you're talking about 2014, 2015. It was absolutely not the time of AI. Even data science did not become so big at that time. So you have faced challenges convincing people that it's a good idea to invest in. So was it a great learning experience for you that how to navigate this? Like, did you learn skills as a, let's say, founder or a salesperson, how to sell these ideas, how to attract them, to convince them? How was that journey? And maybe there is a lot of learning there.
Yeah, and we've had our waves, right? Initially, we started with saying, okay, let's create tools that bridge the gap between what AI could do and what people needed in the industry context, right? The actual needs that industry folks have. So we picked a couple of industries, retail being the first that we ventured into, work with Fortune 100 companies like Amazon, Lowe's, and the likes. These are large enterprises in the US. Multiple challenges that they were trying to bring AI efficiency into. Luckily, early adopters, OB, so I would say was fortunate to, both in investors-wise, Sequoia Capital is probably one of the more visionary venture capital firms out there, and they led our Series A. So we were fortunate to have the partnership of these early visionary clients on the retail side, for example, and even from a funding perspective, having the right venture capital firms who have a visionary side to their thinking. We were very pragmatic. I obviously managed expectations both with clients as well as venture capital, saying that there's going to be an iterative process, right? We now have the know-how, but there is enough of a gap. And so when we started, this was pre-chat GPT moment, post the attention is all you need Transformers paper. So, I mean, it was somewhere in the 2017 to the 2020 window, where AI was real because Transformers was out there and the few labs that were working on it knew the power that they were dealing with. And they knew that accuracy is going to go up, hallucinations will reduce, and suddenly you're talking about maybe a 5x productivity to today's deterministically architected industries that we see. It was very evident. I mean, we knew the secret, and it was very clear to the few that were inside that the secret is a huge one to bet on. How will it shape up was ambiguous, right? So one of the advices that I give founders who reach out to me now, who are joining after the AI hype, is to tell them that build with conviction, not consensus. And because, great ideas are always crazy to begin with. So if there is consensus, there is a problem with the idea to start with. Fundamentally. And
but then it brings the same challenge, right? It's like a two-way problem. I find that when you separate yourself from the hype or whatever is going around, and then look in the future, and that's one dimension to it. Other dimension is what is your calling, right? What you are passionate about, what you think is meaningful to do, what is a positive contribution to the society, etc., etc. That takes you maybe in a direction that is not the most attractive to the investors, right? So, there's a dilemma, right? How to navigate this?
It's a good one. Yeah, finally, it's a business and it's not an NGO. So there there are clear commercial objectives across all stakeholders who participate in the entrepreneurship game. So you're liable to ensure that that is a satisfied criteria of the game. There is no two ways about it. And honestly, there's no way you would actually be able to build a business that's decade plus if you don't have that ability. So it's very important that people also have a detached, unemotional, non-purpose driven objective, KPIs. And that's what kind of Wall Street taught me: data doesn't lie. People tend to have different interpretations of data. That's a different thing, but data doesn't lie, right? So you've got to be data driven, and you've got to be at some level solving for the fiduciary responsibility for all shareholders, which is the job of a CEO like me in any company. But then there is obviously the other part, right? Which is, this journey is going to be ups and downs for everyone. And there are going to be things that are not controllables, like market. I've seen multiple funding hype cycles and, bust cycles, if in lack of better words. So you'd obviously be in times when the real challenge of entrepreneurship to me has been over the last 11 years now, has been being sane in uncertainty. How do you maintain your sanity when there's ambiguity of a different league presented to you, and everyone around you is, jumping because that ambiguity is a serious change of paradigm, if you will. And I've seen such change of paradigms. ChatGPT for us was one where every AI company had to suddenly wake up and say, okay, now where is that I will create my defensible moat? And anything that I would have been doing before this compounded learning, because yeah, of course, I understand attention mechanism, I understand diffusion, I understand what the building blocks from there on to transformers to LLMs to VLMs and so on and so forth, right? But that just is compounded learning. Now, how do you leverage that compounded learning over a few years with the external market event like ChatGPT to now revisit all the assumptions and say, okay, evolution is the only constant. How do I make this inflection an enabler for my business rather than a disruptor for me? And those moments will happen to everyone in the journey. So to your point, that's where purpose plays a role. And I'll be honest, right? These rosy stories sound great in podcasts, but I'll try to be a bit more honest because this is our batch, and I'd rather be honest. I was clueless.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
I was very clueless. I probably had a problem-solving mindset very clearly. That was what I wanted to focus on, but I think I didn't know what's tomorrow. What we probably did is my team, and credit more to them than me, had the courage and the conviction that's needed to look at these problems as opportunities on a day-to-day basis. And over time, when you do that, the problem solving creates enough value that eventually compounds to whatever the company's worth, right? So keeping the head down was important. There will be cycles for anyone in a 10-year horizon where the great times when we did our Series 8 felt like we're the kings of the world. And then there were moments when we felt like, God, I have no clue what's going on. What am I supposed to do next? And that's all part of the game. I think, as I said, my advice to at least founders who come to me today is, who are starting up, is build with conviction, not consensus, one, and, chase clarity. Don't chase clarity, chase momentum would be maybe the other way to put it. Clarity ain't going to be there. And not everything in clarity will be controllable. There'll be external market, there'll be funding cycles, ups and downs. There'll be many uncontrollable variables in this journey. But what you can certainly do is keep yourself on creating true momentum, because then momentum builds momentum, and you eventually get to the right side of where you need to be.
You're saying something very interesting because clarity seems to be a driving force, or let's say a North Star, right? Where am I going, and where it is gonna take me, and how the world will change in few years. So this seems to be an important factor. But when you say, as opposed to that, we should focus on momentum. So momentum from our point of view, what are the factors there that when you say about momentum? Is it a matter of getting more insight about what the users need, or a matter of where the technology is leading, or a matter of how I am organizing my business, and maybe share something in a bit more details about the momentum factor?
Yeah, I would say there are two kinds of momentum, right? And this is just me thinking aloud here. I don't have a theory here, but at least experientially, what I've discovered is there's intrinsic momentum. And when I say intrinsic momentum, it's usually the real value that you're creating day on a day basis, which is the bedrock of foundation any company is based off. And it's visible. I mean, culturally, you'll see your team motivated, even if there are challenges ahead. There are signs that you can see if there is intrinsic momentum, right? People are probably the most important element of any business. So,
Mhm.
you know, people would be the leading indicator of whether you're able to create that intrinsic momentum.
Mhm.
Extrinsic momentum is also equally important because you can't be in a well of a few frogs that are part of the company, right? And in that frog in a well analogy, you have to obviously have a worldview. And more importantly, I think momentum, extrinsic momentum, the best way I probably can succinctly explain it is ability to influence the outside world for the conviction that the intrinsic momentum is based off. So you
Mhm.
need to be able to convince venture capitalists so that this capital, that's a fuel for the people involved towards being able to experiment with a bit more risk-taking ability, and risk-reward ratio would eventually give you certain rewards out of that ability to take risk. And the second I
Right.
would say is clients. You cannot build a real solution in a silo. So at least our way of doing it was we were very honest with our clients on day one, said we're building this and we want to build this in partnership with you so that we're solving true problem statements. And so to get them convinced in a pre-chat GPT era is not easy. And that's where you can start judging your extrinsic momentum creation ability. And as a see, there's someone wise who told me once that while founders and entrepreneurship and all of this is very glamorous, think of yourselves at the middle of the hourglass, where there is this conical triangle underneath and there's this cone above. Um, the above is the extrinsic world, the inside is the
Mhm.
intrinsic world. And if you don't balance these two and create momentum both ways, it's not
Mhm.
functional. So the job of a CEO is probably the least important job of connecting all dots at some level. And ensuring that the team has what they need: capital, resources, the right
Right.
mindset to have the ability to problem solve. You don't do well if you're under artificial pressure. You
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
all of that.
So you are saying a very important point here. It reminds me of our podcast with Abhishek Agarwal, who is doing all these long marathons and races. So he was mentioning that although it looks like it takes a lot of physical stamina, etc., 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 but there is a very big factor of your mind behind it that really drives you. You need to have the support of your mind to go that long run. So this entrepreneurship seems to be very similar to a marathon, right? So you to be able to run that long, which in this context, to run a company, you need to have that conviction, that intrinsic motivation that you're talking about, and that part we need to figure out first, and then the external part grows from that.
Yeah, true. I mean, without intrinsic motivation, you will certainly not go anywhere. So that's the
Mhm.
first thing to solve for. But I'm assuming that anyone who's quitting, I had a pretty good pay package as a Wall Street investment banker to quit that and jump into a zero salary. Let me struggle for the next 5 years. You need to have that intrinsic motivation, I think.
Right.
Anyways, I'm assuming that people would have it, at least in their
Yes, yes, yes. Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um,
All right, great. So maybe let's move forward a little bit. So maybe is this a good time to get deeper into the tech part, or would you tell us more about how the company grew?
Yeah, sure. The way we built our tech is we started with actually picking some industry problem statements that people wanted to truly drive AI-led efficiency. We consciously picked large-scale partners, so the likes of an Amazon, the likes of an Lowe's. Um, we picked an industry because you probably benefit from having some core focus to start with. And what we started with is actually AI tools, call it AI co-pilots, call it whatever you want to call it. Semantics aside, what we were literally trying to do is pick a problem statement that an industry is willing to put R&D budgets and partner with a new age tech startup to try and solve. So we wanted to make sure that we validate the problem statement and the need. So we've got into commercial engagements with most of these partners so that they also walk the talk and put money where their mouth is, right? And with that validation, we started doing these paid collaborations with large enterprises across multimodal contexts. Do understand that when we started, AI and computer vision were two very important, linked yet perpendicular dimensions.
And this is what time you're talking about?
This is probably 2016, 17, just pre ChatGPT by 2 years, maybe. I mean, ChatGPT 1.2 must have come out by then, but it wasn't the ChatGPT we know. I think it was until 2.53 version of ChatGPT that the world suddenly.
Most people did not notice it. Yeah.
So ChatGPT was there. I mean, OpenAI and Avataar almost started the same year, practically the same time zone, and it was a time zone where AI had become real algorithmically. So there was some proof in the pudding already when some of us started the journey. I would say at that point it was predominantly creating these tools for specific contexts, but in the process, what we realized was, hey, there were two things that happened. Technology itself evolved from AI plus computer vision into multimodal AI. So there was a merger that happened in these two dimensions where AI, and today, if you look at, we collaborate with UC Berkeley, for example, and there's an exceptional professor from UC Berkeley who's doing something called world model, which is now trying to take language which has gone to, say, images or videos today with diffusion.
You're talking about Phi Lee.
Yeah, I mean, a world model would be critical for robotics, for example, to function in the real world that we live in. Just an LLM won't get a, it's not a chatbot. It's actually, it has to
I've heard of something called a World Labs by Phi Lee. I don't know which university is associated with.
So we are talking the exact same startup as
that thing. Okay, all right.
So, I mean, it's come to that point where now we're saying AI would be one central super intelligence layer, call it AGI, call it whatever, which would probably understand the world in its entirety. It might take a few decades to get to that level of sophistication.
Few decades.
I think it's at least a decade away because data is, unlike the internet, which has digitized all text to a large extent, there is no digitization of the real world. There are aspects like laws of physics and other things that the world model needs to be very, very sharp around, not just theoretically, but practically. So there's dearth of data, and that's why the need of such world model initiatives that are going on, which is creating the structured data that's required to then hopefully distill that into an intelligence that can start acting and operating independently. So that was one big shift that happened from where we started to somewhere in probably the 2018-19 era, where by then diffusion had come out, attention had come out, and people started realizing that there could be a multi-model capability of inputs and outputs where you're no more limited to a chatbot or an LLM, where text is the input and text is the output. You can start parsing PDFs in a real world scenario, or hearing to a voice call transcribed between a CRM guy and a customer, for example, and be able to distill that as an input modality so that you can, one, train the system, and two, actually start operating like humans would when given a PDF. Being able to
parse. Question here. I think our audience is fairly technical, so they will love this. I think maybe when they start asking questions, they will ask even more technical questions.
Yep.
But I wondered, from what I understood, I am not an expert in multimodal, but of course, LLM takes tokens and it outputs tokens. There is a transformer model in the middle. But when you have an image, let's say, what I understood is you have some kind of input layer or a converter or whatever you call it that takes these pixels, does some kind of convolutional operation, and extracts certain informations that describes that image and transforms it into tokens. And then that token is input to the transformer just the way you will input text tokens extracted from text. And it can be, of course, combined with other text and so on. That's how it works. But I see an obvious problem with that is that you are losing a lot of information. There is this bottleneck where an image, as they say, is more powerful than 1,000 words, but you are maybe extracting 10 words out of it, or maybe 100. Is there now models that can directly input an image in a more holistic way than converting them into tokens?
Yes, Obed. I mean, it's already live. So what you're referring to is something that we call as attention mechanism, which is the underlying algorithmic mechanism for transformers. The attention is all you need paper. The attention is effectively that mechanism that they're referring to. That is exactly how you said predicting the next token. You've already explained how that works. There have been evolutions beyond that. Stability diffusion, for example, brought something very different, which is a denoising architecture. And in there's no prediction of the next token. It's effectively a denoising approach of looking at learning from images as a direct input and being able to create images. The same can be applied today to videos as well. So when you're thinking about multimodal, honestly, the world thinks AI is LLMs. I think the world has come way beyond that. That's like a 2019 assumption to be made. In 2025, multimodality has come in, right? OpenAI has something called Sora. Sora is a diffusion-based approach. Today, it's evolving to a next level where they're trying to get the best out of diffusion, the best out of attention, think through if there is a architecture that can actually go to the next level by doing so. So I would say technically, there are multiple paths today where algorithmically there's a complete different path you take, especially if it's a pixel kind of a scenario. World model is not yet live. What I mean by world model is something that's understanding the true world in its real sense, 3D, laws of physics, all of that. That's not yet there. But being able to parse a 2D image or a pixel world, the flat digitized world, is pretty much live and ready today. And it's important for industry transformations because, I mean, not everyone's trying to build a chatbot, right? It's probably a very important moment for the belief of humanity to shift. So no credits being taken off what OpenAI did with chatbots. But the world is not looking for chatbots. It's not looking for an AI that can respond very cleverly. They're looking for AI that can actually act independently with autonomy and agency. That's where the value unlock happens. And if you look at any of those scenarios, you are going to encounter multimodalities, both in inputs and outputs. In a classic healthcare, like we work with a lot with healthcare today, and in a classic healthcare patient insurance claim, for example, a doctor would have given a patient description of the diagnosis, and then that would probably be a scanned PDF coming into the system. So it's not a text modality to start with. You've got to be able to read the PDF, parse it with accuracy, correct yourself if needed, and then extract that information out into text. Or it could be, for example, a video that someone's had as a CRM call with some other customer on the other side. Or it could be an audio call transcribed in a classic CRM audio call. These are very different modalities. So there are
right. So I understand that there are different like text modalities and vision modalities with diffusion model and stuff. But I see there are different modalities separately. Like, are there architectures that can work with both text and image and video and audio in their native form? And then outputs are also can be one of any of these models. Do they also exist?
Yeah, they're coming to play. I wouldn't say there's some state-of-the-art model that you can just pick right now. There are some which have vision language models, for example, which do handle modalities. But what you're looking for, I can understand, is something that can actually truly process inputs in its original format. I think that's not yet out. There's work happening to get there. Having said that, it doesn't limit today's AI efficacy because you can create routers and orchestrations where you pick what's needed for the context that you're dealing with. Like, for example, if the input is image, you can use a diffusion model. If the input is a text, you could probably use an LLM. So those orchestrations are easy to do today, and so they're not really a block, I would say.
Got it. So yeah, I can think of some small applications. Like, I have an image, I can ask questions in text that what is in this image, and whatever, I get answer in text. But in the middle, of course, there is the image. But also there are applications that I write in text, please generate this image, and so on. This is already happening. In ChatGPT, I could do this. But yeah. Okay, great. Then let's move on.
More real world scenario, right? Just extending your use case, the best way to take it to the next level would be, let's take an automotive player and say it's a second-hand car dealership. Being able to have someone just simply take a phone and walk around the car to take the images and the videos required, at the consumer home, and then be able to use AI to actually find all the deformities, all the issues, which is a hugely manual intensive task today, is a huge unlock of. So the same use case that you took can be extended into real world scenarios of that nature. And that's where the value unlocks, right, at some level.
Absolutely. I think there is very transferable. This is, we're kind of making things possible which were not possible before, and it can be easily transferred to different things. But I think it's a very good segue to your products of Avatar, right? So maybe tell us a little bit of what are your main products, what are the capabilities right now, and what do you envision what would be possible in next 5 years, let's say.
Yeah, so right now we have a research team in SF. We formally collaborate with UC Berkeley, who is probably the mecca of multimodal AI. Stanford is probably the mecca of language and text-based AI. So it was a preference to go UC Berkeley for us, given the industry context we work with. So there's a research team in SF that connects this academic state-of-the-art inflection that's happening in these brilliant academic circles and brings it to our applied team. And we have a large base in Bangalore, which is effectively AI and ML researchers and developers, machine learning engineers, if in lack of better words, and ML ops and some of those elements, who are trying to take those academic inflection points that are happening as we progress and connect those dots. Today, we probably connect more than dots in our platform, so that orchestrating a real world industry need is faster, efficient, and scalable. Right. So the ability to not just act, but act with intelligence and at scale has been the true north of the applied context that we've been working for. In terms of the product offering, I would call it a platform more so than a product, because honestly, at least my personal view is that products will not be so defensible in the new AI native era that we are getting into. You would probably see more platforms kind of a play, where there are certain platforms that are geared for certain outcomes and have a lead advantage edge, competitive edge in terms of enabling better outcomes for certain true norths that the platform's built on. So we've kind of built our platform around saying, can we truly create a mission critical enterprise grade autonomy where humans are augmented, in the sense that while there's a lot of noise today in terms of humans thinking AI will replace the jobs, I actually think it'll, if you look at industrial revolutions of before in the World Economic Forum context, it is painful. It takes time for that adjustment to happen. Getting out of comfort zone is never easy, but no one's really achieved anything great in life without getting out of the comfort zone. So humanity, if it needs to achieve greatness, and I actually am a strong believer that AI will be augmenting humans in ways that we're not able to imagine today, and that has a power of making a human a superhuman. And if you look at it, I felt the same when I was back in Microsoft Windows Mobile. I felt that if this device is in everyone's hand, and if knowledge is now not in an MIT library or an IIT Bombay library, but it's in your hand with the Google.com, the kind of superhuman capabilities that one device gives to the human who's holding it is extraordinary, right? And the reason I went into Microsoft and Windows Mobile was to say that this is going to happen. This was 2003. Apple wasn't there yet, right? It was obvious if you look at it, saying, hey, I mean, if 10 people have it in IIT Bombay ka mera batch, the rest of the others have no option but to take it, because they won't be able to compete with these 10 people anymore. And competition is the best out of us, right? There's a very positive part of competition. It drives each of us towards excellence and the pursuit of excellence. I feel even more strongly about that, about AI, than I did on mobile devices, because about a true co-pilot of intelligence that's creating serious multiplier to human creativity. And the reason I'm saying AI won't replace humans is I don't see an algorithmic answer, despite all the hype that happens on LinkedIn and other sources. I don't see an answer to replace human creativity as of now. That might be a ChatGPT 8 movement like Sam just spoke about last. And then we'll have to come up with not a Turing test, but a much larger test of AI being able to do that, something that humans could never even contemplate being able to achieve, right? And until that point happens, human creativity is today its own beast. AI is nowhere close to it. So I think it'll be a human creativity plus AI augmentation future that I see. as of
Now,
today.
now that we're touching a little bit of the philosophical discussion, and we love it. Our audiences love this. I'll just throw something in. We'll have more of that in the question
That's
answer
a camp
session.
session, right? So we are all back in IIT and
Yeah, we love the philosophical discussion. I think so far what has happened is that we have used tool, right? The rise of human beings itself as a species that rules the world today has been mostly based on, well, many things, but one of the major factor is the use of tools, right? And help them to survive better. So we have seen machines as physical objects, and it can automatize things, it can do heavy lifting and things that human beings cannot do. So we have so far seen it this way, and of course industrial revolution happened, and aeroplanes came in, and nuclear bombs came in, nuclear plants came in, all kinds of things. But so far we have seen this as something external, a machine that is made of metals, and it's a strong thing, but it's a stupid thing. But now the game is, it is getting intelligent. I think it's the first time in human history it is happening that machines have become smart. Of course, and also, I mean, these are statistical models, but people use expressions like artificial intelligence, and these are scary words for, I can imagine, people who are not technical. For them, it's a scary thing, like artificial intelligence. So if we, as human beings, maybe call it a human hubris, but we valued our intelligence very much, that we thought, okay, we can distinguish ourselves because these robots are stupid, but I can take smart decisions. But now that there is this threat or potential or whatever you call it, positive or negative, that machines are going to get smarter, I can understand how that can be upsetting. That, well, my intelligence is not going to be valid anymore. So what I'm going to do?
Yeah, no, but if you look at it, and this is a very interesting point you're hitting. This was exactly the panel talk in the World Economic Forum. And if you look at the machines, industrial revolutions with machines, right? Back then, it was maybe a world that was more brawn than brain, right? And the physical leadership that human hands and the agility of the fingers and the capability that we have is pretty much similar to our minds. It is more capable than most of the other species that we see on the planet. And then machines came and they said, you are rendered useless. So I don't think this is the first time. I think it's just because it's happening to our generation, we are probably sitting there and viewing it with magnifying lens. But if we just detach a bit, I think every generation has had these moments where something that was very prized skill became obsolete in no time because of a technological advancement. And I think same with AI. I agree. This is more scarier, Obi. And like with any technology, it's a knife. One could use it to cut vegetables and feed the poor. One could murder someone. And obviously, there is the other side to the equation as much. And I'm not someone who's saying that won't happen. That will certainly happen. But then the good and the bad hopefully will balance out itself in a way that today, would you say the bad of a mobile phone next to you, there's a statistics that 90% of us keep a mobile phone within 10 meters when we sleep, knowing very well the radiation is pretty bad for us, right? Do you think that bad gets compensated when you can talk to, say, your mom or your wife or your daughter when you're on the other side of the planet? These are pros and cons. Now, to each their own. I don't think there's a simple one answer I can give. Everyone would have their opinion, and hopefully the good will overweigh the bads that come out of this. This is pretty much the case with everything else. The only difference today is, maybe to your point, we never thought our bodies were challenged. Our ability to work monotonously is a very limited capability that humans have. That got challenged with tech coming in and with basic RPA kind of automations coming in. Now we're saying, is human ingenuity in terms of their creative expression and their ability to bring novelty to the world, is that going to get challenged? And I totally understand the emotion and the fear. But one thing I've learned in everything, be it sports, be it entrepreneurship, be it anything that I've been part of, is if you play with the fear of losing versus you play with the excitement of winning, and both are equally possible. I'd rather be on the right? So
yeah.
usually that's a trade-off we're all with, right? There is no right answer.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. And maybe because I come from IIT, I have this mindset. I don't look at this as negatively at all. Many of my colleagues do. And I say, what is the point of looking at it negatively? Like, if it happens, it will happen anyway. You cannot prevent it.
Yep.
Let's look at the positive side.
Or a meteor could come and just hit the earth and
Yeah,
we are all dead,
exactly.
right? So anything could happen. If we really had to think of doomsday, there have been enough
Yeah.
doomsday predictions every century.
Right. All right. So let's finish up what you started. You wanted to go now toward what is coming in 5 years, maybe for your company. What do you envision?
Yeah, I actually think that we've found ourselves a very unique niche path, which is probably also tying back to the India AI mission and some of those things that probably drove this podcast. The way at least I presented both to the Indian government as well as to my team is, if you look at the space war, right? ISRO doesn't compete with US and China to try and land in Mars first. And it's a sensible decision to make because, just to give you a context, the last round Anthropic raised is greater than the entire dry powder Indian venture capital ecosystem. So similarly, China has way more wherewithal today with the GDP where it is than India would ever have. So we are going to be resource constrained. And it's very important for us to probably accept that, because acceptance then leads our minds to solutions rather than resist and say, oh no, India is going to compete at the state-of-the-art frontier. So we might still need indigenous models, and what government is doing is important for us as a fallback plan. Imagine a scenario where we're at war with a country whose models we're using. You cannot be in that situation. So you need a fallback, which is at least 90% there, 110, because it gives you a fighting chance. So those are different reasons why that mission is happening. But if India were to want to win this game, they probably have to simply emulate what ISRO would have done, what an Infosys would have done in the digital transformation wave, which is to say that, okay, we are probably very resource constrained. We don't have $100 million like OpenAI to throw on experiments, and be okay with it. Then therefore, can we find paths which are substantial enough in terms of value creation and viable enough in terms of the constraints we operate with? And it's honestly the ISRO playbook. I mean, today ISRO launches a satellite in the orbit which powers our mobile phones at 1/50th the cost NASA can, right? So it's, instead of playing the I'll prove myself better than thou, ISRO took an approach of saying, I'm going to drive efficiency as my true north. If I look at AI today, very similar equation. There's an accuracy game, a path towards AGI, building an Einstein or a super Einstein, right? In today's way of looking at it, that's one path which is equally lucrative and worthwhile. But the other path is to say, okay, you know what? Fine, we'll maybe land in Mars tomorrow. But hey, there's a capability today to just put an satellite in the orbit, and that satellite can start helping defense, can start helping mobile communications, can power internet. I mean, there's so many capabilities that that satellite can unlock here and now, not in some future. And that's a very efficiency-oriented game, right? How do I make it viable? How do I make scale happen? How do I make acceptance and adoption happen? So where Avatar's future is, and it's been that for, I would say, a while now, knowing the constraints I operate with. I mean, I'm one of the largest funded AI startups in India, but that doesn't make me anywhere close to the top 100 AI funded startups in the US. And having that pragmatism is important, because otherwise I would take the wrong decisions. So today what we are effectively doing is we have a platform that enables people to create not Einsteins, and why do you need an Einstein to solve an algebra equation if that's what you're trying to solve? But AI that can autonomously handle an algebra equation if that's your problem. And it'll do it far more efficient. So it'll be not a 1.8 trillion plus parameter model that knows what it's thinking, but just condense it down, distill it down in right technical terms, quantization, tuning, and approaches like these, where you can truly bring efficiency for the task specialized focus and a compact model that focuses on it. It has multiple advantages. One, when it forgets about all the other trajectories, it has less trajectories to hallucinate around. So it's at least, it knows only so much, and it can have within those domains. That's one big advantage. Second, we are 1 by 500x plus on inference cost savings. So, we
Mm.
put a paper with Berkeley where we benchmarked against OpenAI O1 back in Jan. And it's a public report that we put out where for a particular given task, we were able to handle like 1 by 580 the inference token costs.
Mm. Mhm.
OpenAI was 60 cents per million tokens. We were like 0.1 cent ish, 0.1 to 1.13 cents per million tokens. So that's a huge unlock for a high traffic, high volume use case. Now think of
Mhm.
insurance calls in a healthcare, for example, where people are calling 1.5 million calls per month. That kind of traffic volume, if you then apply the token costs for a 1.8 trillion parameter model, it'll run into $100 million plus of compute. Um,
Yeah.
it's not viable to truly unlock scale at that cost inhibition. So today, I think our platform is geared towards using these excellent Einsteins that are evolving. Super Einstein's a better word, clearly, given your previous question. But and using them as teacher models and having an approach where you're creating greater accuracy through the task understanding in the context that you build around the specific task at a significantly lower cost to that general intelligence. So
Right.
while there is an AGI path, I think India has an opportunity to actually become the use case capital creation path. We have talent density needed. There's obviously a lot of training needed. There's a lot we need to do. Don't
Mm.
hear me wrong, but as long those are controllables, there are many good companies now in India that can actually do that together. The government coming in is a huge impetus in that direction because now we have a sounding board on the table. We have the influence to take the right decisions collectively and hopefully
Mm.
put India in that pedestal of getting there. And if we do that, it will probably be exactly what Narayan Murthy and Nandan Nilekani, our senior, would have done back
Mm.
in the day. Because even then, if
Mhm.
you their journey, when they came in, no one respected India for math. No one thought India had this crazy talent capability of converting that math foundation into computer science. So
Mm.
they obviously, for the first 10 years, would have struggled convincing people we can do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Once they started doing it, and the
And it
threat
all
based
happened. Yeah.
compounding happens over time, and hopefully that's the play that India can truly play. And I think it's an important one, especially if you look at our own intrinsic one. So that's the India to the globe contribution, right? I think we're probably trying to emulate ISRO in that sense, learning from their good work. And intrinsically, I think there's a huge unlock that India needs to do ASAP, just to be ready for the AI disruption wave ahead.
Mm.
The many discussions I've been part of recently where people are now doubting whether 1.4 billion population is a positive or a negative, right? And it's a fair
Yes.
question to ask, and no one has a crystal ball to just gaze and give the right answer. But that's a pertinent question in many minds. The only way to
Mm.
truly make it an enabler rather than a disruption, this inflection of AI intelligence, is making every citizen AI powered, making every
Mm.
enterprise and SME AI powered, making every government agency and governance in general start tapping into these productivity jumps.
Mm.
All of them come together. So in our India AI mission, the idea is to create a platform UPI-like for AI. We call it UAI. It's a multi-year journey to get there. We're starting with creating basic tools needed for citizens to be empowered. This could be, say, a farmer who's dealing with a plant disease, for example.
Mhm.
Not effort in opening I token cost for sure.
Yeah.
How do you get this capability and intelligence at least specified to his problem in
Mhm.
their
Mhm.
phones and in their hands, right? To going into
All
say
right.
SME, marketing, finance, all sort of function suddenly becoming super productive. Going into governance, think of satellite data, which we now have access to thanks to ISRO, and connecting the satellite data in real time towards traffic advisory, for example, or mapping infrastructure and things like that. So there's so much opportunity, honestly, if you were to look at it. We've listed more than 100 plus use cases across citizens, government, governance, and enterprise slash SME buckets. And I think the greater purpose here, like to your first question, is India would need to do this. India did this in the digital transformation wave. We did some, and we don't give our government much credit, but back in the day, the government leapfrogged 4G, leapfrogged the mobile ecosystem. If not for that, UPI wouldn't be where it is today, right? If you look
Mhm.
at the story, there's enough good things we've done in that digital
Mhm.
wave to be here. I mean, we can always take the other side, less problems. And today's government hopefully does the same, and that's the vision these guys have come with, and so that's the greater purpose there.
Yeah, I totally agree with you that. So looking at the US, the way it has come out with ChatGPT and stuff, so I somehow feel yes, they are leading AI, and then they have a lot of money and resources, and they are doing excellent work. All of that is good, but what I find is what is strength is also a weakness, because their direction is put in. They are putting millions now. Now, how do we scale it from here? So you have to put billions, and then they'll have to build nuclear power and so on. But on the contrary, we have really a brilliant example here with the DeepSeek, right? What China has done.
Yep.
Because of the scarcity, they have taken a different path. They have done innovation, and they have made it much cheaper, but equally accurate and then good as the US. I think in India, it's the similar opportunity, I think. So as they say, necessity is the mother of invention. So we don't have so much money. But
I'm
we
going
can take
some of these lines, Obi.
Sorry?
I'm certainly going to copy some of these lines, but very well put. Very well put.
Right. Right. So I think it's in a good track, because what they did also in landing a rocket in the moon with a fraction of price. And this is excellent, because these kind of endeavors are very expensive anyway. So it is good to, optimize them and make it viable and cheaper and all of that. But yeah, I mean, it's very exciting what you're doing. It makes all of us very proud. And you can really impact the society, because I see it not just as a technological revolution, but also a lot of work I feel is needed to, as you just put it, we need to penetrate the society, because educating people, making them use these tools, changing their mindset from negative to positive, these are all big challenges. And this is not just a technological problem, right? So these are societal problems, socioeconomic problem, geographical problem, all kinds of things. And having the government as your partner is absolutely essential and necessary to do this. Yeah.
Yep, I agree with you. I think it's a need of the hour. Not going to be easy. I mean, as I said, the last industrial revolution was almost, if I read my history books right recently around it, but if those guys were right, it took almost 2-3 decades of pain for that transformation to happen, right? The change is never easy. Getting out of comfort zone is never easy. And I can see that happening. I think it's already started. People are not yet realizing what's happening in the decision rooms at the top in enterprises. But it's about replacing a lot of the repetitive tasks with AI agency. So I think there is obviously a negative aspect of it. And if people don't evolve, then they'll be left irrelevant, which is a significant problem for them in their livelihood. So hopefully we'll effectively do it. And hopefully, to your point, more than us, necessity would be the mother of that change. Because there is a necessity today. So hopefully, and that line I'm certainly going to copy as I look forward. So
of course. So Sravanth, I probably have like 10 more questions for you, but I think I should give the stage over to the other. Yeah, I think usually after 1 hour, I give it over to everybody else to interact. So the stage is yours, guys. Please ask your questions. I'll be silent now.
So good to see you guys. It's been like, what, 20 plus years? Hopefully the reunion these guys are planning is a place where we all get to see each other.
Guys, go ahead and speak up.
He is the mastermind behind reunion as well. He is the glue which is binding the batch together.
Yep, Abhishek. We need people like you guys.
OB is Fevicol.
We'll try to be a wood then.
OB दो स्वेटर पहन के और बीच में बैठा हुआ है.
Yep.
That's a good observation.
No, this is amazing, guys. I think turn on my video.
Not as amazing as you guys, Sikandar.
नहीं यार. I'm mute नहीं है, मैं बात कर रहा हूँ.
And hi to her.
वो इतनी देर से देख रही थी कि म्यूट पे पड़ा हुआ है, क्या कर रहे हैं. This is amazing, man. I think as an early founder, जो तू बोल रहा है, it's making a lot of sense that when you start, you can't build on consensus. थोड़ा सा और elaborate करेगा? If you have any anecdotes from the time when you started and
Yeah, many. Honestly, the biggest learning in the last 10 years, Sikandar, I'm sure you have your stories, which is why you're relating to it. But what I've kind of realized is, we all seek external validation in life. It's important, right? Being on this podcast with brilliant minds like you guys is validation for me. It helps. So there's no taking away that part of our egocentric existence. But in reality, if consensus was there on an idea you are excited about, you're too late to it, right? Because if it's colloquial knowledge, it is not. It's not going to be something that shapes a paradigm shift. And so, just a very fundamental of a great idea at some level is to say that at the early stage of that idea, it looks crazy. People around see you and say, "What's wrong with this guy?" And trust me, I've had close friends who were like, "Tu pagal hai kya? मतलब Wall Street छोड़ के 3 साल से struggle क्यों कर रहा है?" But that's life, right? You cannot, and it affects you. In the first, I would say, 5 years of my entrepreneurship journey, I cared, and the amount of energy and the amount of noise that I would have dealt with and wasted my energy around, both intrinsically, like my own employees, to investors, to clients, to friends, to the entire societal setup, right? Since I've made the shift of saying, let's start building with conviction, not that consensus, because consensus is almost like gratification seeking, veiled as very good thing, paradox at some level. I started realizing that you have to be more data oriented and conviction driven. And as long as you're that and people around you are probably not with you, it's okay. It's totally fine. You should tell yourself, okay, I might have a great idea here and the people aren't getting. So I've figured out a way of telling myself that repeatedly, because the ego within us, as you all would have experienced in your lives, very relative. And that gratification part, which today shows up in all the social instant gratification, which is a big driver in how we feel, how we make decisions, what we're going after. Conviction is away from all of that. Conviction is absolute. It's usually data driven. It doesn't have emotions in it. It is usually logical and rational, more left brain than right brain. While right brain is important, that left brain sanity and detachment kind of gives you that little bit of a bubble. And you'll need that early stage, right, Sikandar? I mean, you've spent initially, तुझसे भी कोई तो पूछा होगा, "अबे तू क्या कर रहा है?" And it's sensible because the other guy is not getting it. He's thinking, "अबे पागल है क्या तू? मुझे दिख नहीं रहा." And but तुझे दिख रहा है, right? And who do you want to bet on? Someone who's put 24/7 on the damn thing, which is you, or someone who's just coming outside in and just throwing a judgment without having any context. So I've started realizing that absolute is maybe the only way I'll be sane. And it comes back to the point I was telling Obi, which is my biggest challenge has been to find sanity and uncertainty in this journey. Because there are times when I'm like, "Abhi main itna bada company nahi banao." Right? Aage koi hoga venture capitalist who's like writing a check and saying, "Le le." And वो तो फेंक दिया चेक, उसके बाद मैं भागता रहूंगा अगले 4 साल, right? So I have to put myself in the ground and say, it's not the right perception. He's not even understood my business where I stand today. So he's certainly not a partner, which is the other side of the extreme, where someone's coming and telling you you're better than what you think you are. I've seen that part of the journey. And then there's been part of the journeys, in especially the initial years, where the AI wasn't accepted and people thought I was just wasting my time like a Tesla or someone who's like thinking something which will never happen by my death, and which was viable. So, but I had my own algorithmic convictions. I had my journey to put me with that conviction. And while it wasn't a calling like Obi, you said, for me, it was somehow natural. So I did build that conviction. And to Sikandar's question, I've been better to my team, better to my investors, better to my ecosystem when I'm absolute driven by conviction and data oriented thinking rather than the relative gratification and the consensus orientation and all of that. Sikandar, I hope I gave you a little bit of my experience at you, but I'm sure you'll
I
have.
think थोड़ा बहुत element hindsight का भी है, नहीं?
Yeah,
उस time में तो But it's spot on. I think that's really good.
But I have the benefit of 10 years of hindsight, Sikandar. So, there are multiple waves where I've been like, what the heck am I doing? Uh, but yeah, that's the wisdom that's come about from hindsight. Very rightly said. Yeah, guys, I know we are beyond the time, but happy to take any questions if you guys have.
एग्री वाला यूज केस ही बता दे यार, अपने लिंक्डइन पे वो कन्वर्सेशन रहेगा
वो तो मैं तेरे को directly reach out करने वाला हूँ, तेरे से ज्ञान भी चाहिए मुझे, but there is an opportunity for us to partner, Sikandar, in
basically what you just mentioned is what you're looking at, right? How can you do a fit for purpose?
Honestly, I need someone like you to tell me the real problems. I don't want to cook up shit that my team has no clue. So the reason we partnered with government is they have these organizations that they're bringing in. आपने देखा होगा बारामती में उन्होंने actually एक AI deployment किया है farmers के साथ, which was fairly successful. So we wanted someone who will tell us the true problems, and I don't have a direct farmer access or any agriculture.
तुम बारामती में कहाँ केवीके में काम कर रहे हो, किधर कर रहे हो?
अभी वो डिसाइड कर रहे हैं अभिषेक, फाइनली across India करना है. That's a directive from the top. How will we do the pilots needed to validate the necessary things, and that's where maybe we and Sikandar's team can collaborate, because you guys would have a much better sense of the reality and the needs. And for all you know, you may have a use case where you're like, I want AI here and it'll benefit India. So we'd love to take that to the government and say, here's one more use case. And trust me, there's enough money to fund good ideas here. So as long as we're doing something that has truly well thought through and value accretive, I think there's an opportunity.
इतना surreal लग रहा है hearing you talk about Baramati, because like,
Yeah.
I just posted on our No Rules group. Professor Pushpak Bhattacharya expired today, earlier in the day.
Oh, sad to hear that.
So I was working with him in Media Lab Asia, and Media Lab Asia was a joint project between MIT and IIT Bombay at that time.
Yeah.
And KVK Baramati was helping us at that time to basically test bed for all the innovations that IIT Bombay was doing. So in बारामती के पास में पाबल करके एक गांव है जहाँ पे विज्ञान आश्रम करके एक एनजीओ है. So that NGO plus KVK Baramati has got a very long standing with IIT Bombay to do test bed for farming and village related projects. So when I heard the name Baramati again, I was like, कि क्या बात है, आज तो बारामती की ही बातें हो रही हैं.
Yeah,
So we were reminiscing, yeah.
Sad to hear that news, though. May his soul rest in peace. But having said that, I think Baramati was clearly the area they picked for the first pilots.
Yes.
Of trying to implement AI for farmers.
I think वहाँ का KVK is also the most active and most trusted by the nearby villages. So like amongst other KVKs, they are more well respected out there types.
That probably explains the decision then, Abhishek, was finally adoption करना है ना.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe their influence is higher. But we need that influence. And second, we also need partners like you who actually have a real domain understanding. Real problems kya hai, kya hawa mein hai, kya, we don't want to waste any capital. So jo bhi karenge, let's do it with impact. So I'm going to set up time with you separately and
that'll be great.
Brainstorm on how we can pull you guys into the mission.
Actually, hafte yahin par hai, so it'll be perfect. We are doing a big team thing.
Awesome. Yeah.
Great. Glad to see connections are being built. Anybody else wants to ask something? Say hello.
Oh, that's. I was expecting this to be just a one-on-one podcast that people would hear offline. Looks like good to meet all of you guys. Yeah, it's been such a long time.
Yeah, it's always great to have people live in the live session.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
One question to Vipud or Ganja. If people remember it, कौन से ट्रैक पे कहाँ पे तू किस माउंटेन से लॉगिन कर रहा है?
अभी तो मैं योसेमिटी में हूँ. मतलब मुझे एक क्वेश्चन आया, but I don't think that is going with the theme. Like I would like to know कि what did you lose in so many like past 10-15 years which you think कि यार ये मिस हो गया?
Many
You
things.
had that, but
Um,
you kind of missed it in your personality, or you kind of lost it in time?
Many things, I would say. And most of it because of relative gratification oriented mindset. But many things, yeah. matlab, I was so early into the space, I could have been playing this very differently. In hindsight, like Sikandar said, it's very easy to look back. Um,
No,
I
it
don't
doesn't have to be work related. मतलब my general question था कि
life, man.
because like I think like
All
the
my
podcast
life,
became very much focused on the AI and the work and the company itself. Like I
many,
was talking about like Sravanth, like what Sravanth had which he lost.
I think the ability to balance work and life was completely off. So there was no social life in the first 5 years, and it does impact you, right? When you have, say, 100 plus employees whose salaries are due next month, and you're the only one responsible, it isn't a burden that you can easily take. So there are many nights you don't sleep properly. So I think I've first of all lost my health and my peace of mind in the first 5 years, until I started realizing, okay, I need to detach. I'm not a god. Let's not get into God syndrome and take ownership of everything onto myself. I'll do the best that I can. But in the process, I would have probably not met anyone because I've never had the luxury to always on a flight. So I probably missed the first three. When my daughter was born, I was in the other side with Google in Mountain View, and I could only land 2 days after because I was in the middle of something very important. So multiple sacrifices, I would say, that I would not have made knowing me, but in the process, and time and space, right? You're out of mind, you're out of attention. So I've probably lost friends that I truly value at some level, because the distance has created that little bit of a gap, if you will. And I'm not saying lost the friend, but lost the touch with the friend, right? From school days to IIT days to Wharton days, it's across my entire pre-Avatar backdrop, if you will. So, yeah, like Abhishek said, a बहुत hard question hai. If I look back, I'll only be disappointed, because unfortunately there'll be many to list, and I could fill up a book now that it's 11 years. But I've started realizing there's no point living in the past. You learn from each of these failures, so you can either look at it as a failure, or you could look at it as saying, okay, at least have that perspective. Today, at least, I think I'm a better father than I was, say, 4 years back. My daughter is now 7. And I think that's a learning, right? So hopefully I will learn from all of these so-called negativities that came about in the last 10 years. But there are many such, Ganjay, there are many such, where I've had to skip things that I wouldn't have skipped. Wasn't there when someone needed me, and all of this is honestly genuine, by the way. Just to explain to you, matlab, the next month's salary, especially when you're 100 plus employees, is not fun. And no one will take the accountability but the poor founder and CEO in the middle of that hourglass. So वो ऊपर देख रहा है investors बोल रहे हैं तेरा problem है, नीचे देख रहा है employees बोल रहे हैं मिल रहा है ना salary, and you're like in that little bit of a sandwiched pressure. And I don't think I was as mature as I would have liked to be when I started this journey in this aspect. For me to be able to detach and say, "Well, मैं भगवान नहीं हूँ, एक और आदमी हूँ, दिल से जितना कर सकता हूँ करूँगा." After that, what's the point? What's the point of stressing when there are uncontrollable? So that pressure was a real burden, which drives people into this. So, and you would have seen that with other entrepreneurs too, because when I meet entrepreneurs who've gone through this, they also look back and say, "Fuck, I missed all of this," which Shravan, the pre-avatar Shravan, would probably not want to do. But that's life, I guess, Vibhu. तो किसी specific चीज पे पूछना तो पूछ ले.
No, but generally, like, I was just kind of seeking opinion that what part of the Shravanth is lost. But उसी का follow up था कि like then like now it's easy to look back. Like so now if you have to look in the future, what part of the Shravanth will you like to closely guard and save for the next 20 years?
Yeah, I mean, at a personal level, I would say I've stopped trying to be someone that others expect me to be. And probably for the first time in my life, and this is at 40, so I'm probably a bit late. But for the first time in my life, I'm comfortable being me. And that I think is a big change. Without Avatar, I may not have been there. All through the earlier competitive journey leading into Wall Street was all competitive and about proving myself to others, right? At this point, I think the burden that I used to carry of perhaps an insecurity-driven one, because you have to first acknowledge you're not good enough to prove yourself to someone. But I'm today, I would say I'm far more comfortable being in my skin and being me. Whether someone likes it or not likes it is their opinion, and rightfully so. They have their own right of making their choice. And if I respect myself, I should respect them. But I've started respecting my own ability, desire to be me. I would say that, and that means a lot of things that Vibhu, you would know, which is music was probably more important than acads all through IIT, as you probably knew, composing songs with me. Um, I have not picked the guitar to compose a song in the last 10 years. Before that, it was my go-to, right? So was I being me? Probably not, because if my natural self in a stress zone would simply go and join a band and just, just let it out. Today, I probably am starting to think about all of those things, trying to be actually me, whether it fits into the colloquial way of a successful Sravanth or probably doesn't matter to me anymore as much as it used to. So I do think that this journey has helped me get that little bit of clarity of trying to be closer to be me than someone else. And it's tough to say, right? We change every 5 years. We better do, because if we don't, we're not learning. So I don't know if at 47 I would say the same thing that I'm saying today. Hopefully not, which would only reflect on me improving and growing. But as of today, that's probably the most important thing, Vibhu, that I've realized I haven't done to myself. And as I say, if I can't love myself, I'll probably not love anyone else. So maybe I'm starting back from scratch one at 40, being comfortable being in my skin and being me. And then hopefully from there on comes the sharing the unconditional love outside to those who I care about. But yeah, still in that journey of shift. And started only at 40, so you can call me late to the game.
Chris,
वो
no,
इसको ऑर्गेनाइजिंग कमेटी में डाल दे और इसको इवेंट्स वाला कैटेगरी दे दे उसको।
तो हो गया बेटा सिकंदर। काम तो अभी भी उतना ही है तो।
हाँ, तो ये करना है कि अभी हम एज ऑर्गेनाइजिंग कमेटी में और ओबी नोट कर रहे हैं कि श्रवण को गोवा लेके आना है और उसके हाथ में गिटार पकड़ानी है।
Yep, I would love to do that.
ठीक है, एंड फिर आधी रात के बाद विभू को माइक देना है, जो सबसे ऐसे डीप क्वेश्चंस पूछेगा।
Yep.
ये बॉनफायर के बगल में अच्छे लगेंगे।
Yep, but that's expected of Vibhu, मतलब।
See, विभू से ये सवाल नहीं पूछ सकते कि तू हर पहाड़ पे क्या छोड़ के आता है, राइट?
Yeah, but hash respect, man. Vibhu, what you're doing, unbelievable.
तुम कोई पहाड़ चढ़ लो, हाँ, मतलब विभू के दिल का एक टुकड़ा विभू छोड़ के आता है। ये अलग बात है कि विभू का दिल बहुत बड़ा है, सारे टुकड़े छोड़ने के बाद भी हम सबके लिए जगह है।
आज श्रवंत के बारे में बात करते हैं।
मैंने तेरा पॉडकास्ट देखा नहीं। I should have joined and asked you some questions.
पॉडकास्ट में देख, तू मेरे से मिल ले, वही बहुत है। यहाँ से 15 किलोमीटर दूर रहता है, उसके बाद भी तेरे से मिलना नहीं हो पाता, तो फिर पॉडकास्ट छोड़, तू यहीं पे आके मिल ले।
Yep, agree, aligned, not contesting that.
विभू, तेरे को योसेमिटी में नेटवर्क कैसे मिल रहा है भाई?
जहाँ चाह वहाँ रहा है।
मेरे को लगता है with all the adventures Vibhu does, he like government would have given him a satellite phone कि तुम रहो connected हमेशा types.
Anybody else wants to ask any question or comments, feedback?
I would just say a great podcast, Sravanth. If you are here next time, just let us know. मिलते हैं कभी.
Yep, that's clearly a feedback being taken from the podcast. But yeah, I agree. Time for me to correct some wrongs.
Great. Okay. Good to see you all. Thanks.
Thanks. Anybody else? If not, let's thank Sravanth. It was a great journey, with you. Let me. Somebody's trying to join now. It's a bit too late. But Sravanth, it was such a pleasure talking to you. I could connect with you in so many levels. Of course, I'm not a founder, but we have somehow a similar way of thinking, right? We have such like IIT Bombay is shapes our lives, our thinking, the way we are. There is a common base there. So it's a great feeling to touch base and then connect again. As I have heard that you plan to come and meet us in Goa, this will be excellent to see you in person again.
Before we
And-
close, Dasa, तेरे को कुछ पूछना पड़ेगा भाई श्रवण से.
Dasa hai kya?
तू बस क्वेश्चन पूछने के लिए आया है.
Go ahead.
दादा पूछेगा राम कौन थे?
Dasa hai kya?
जस्ट अभी ज्वाइन किया ना डासा ने.
तो क्वेश्चन पूछने के लिए आया था. सही.
प्रॉक्सी लगाने के लिए आया डासा किसी की.
बेलागिरी की हद हो गई दासा, बट ठीक है. Go ahead. You there? ये आर्य वही है क्या?
हाँ.
Okay, maybe he's not in a position to speak now. Okay, so yes, so we want to wish you all the best. What you are doing is excellent, and let us know how we can get involved, how we can be a part of this great journey. Wish you all the best, and yeah, let's just keep in touch. Yeah, thanks a lot for your time.
Thank you so much, guys. It's all my privilege with all of you, not the other way around. Thank you.
And thanks everybody for joining. It was a great pleasure having you.
Thanks, Shobhi. Thanks, Shravan.
Bye-bye.